Howdy, y'all, and welcome to the Stay Creative Podcast, a show dedicated to sharing indie music one talented artist at a time, while also inviting you, the listener, to get more creative, to play more music, to make more art, and to share it with your friends and your family and the outside world. The world is a better place with you in it, with your creations in it, and when we communicate and we share those ideas and creations together. Today I'm talking with Isaiah Kallman. He's a good friend of mine, and he is the songwriter, singer, guitar player of his own project, Van Damage. He's got new music coming out soon, and I'm actually going to be playing drums on his upcoming album. So I'm really excited to talk more with him about his journey as an artist, but also just the kinds of things that he is hoping this music does. It communicates to people. I think he's got a lot of insightful things to say, and I'm excited to talk with him. Of course, be sure to check out his music in the show notes. There are links, and song titles and things like that will be available. Thank you for agreeing to come on the show to share your time and your talent and your insights and your experience and inevitably your vulnerability with us by sharing your art. And I'm really grateful for that. And I believe the world is better with you in it. The world is better with these kinds of conversations happening. So thank you very much.
Yeah, definitely. I was going to ask you if that was show prep, but that was kind enough for me to believe we're live.
We are making a podcast right now. Yeah. Okay. Awesome, man. The first thing I'd like to give you a moment to do is just kind of introduce yourself.
Well, my name is Isaiah Kallman. If you wanted my full name, that's Isaiah John Van Dusen Kallman, which is lovely. It makes it sound like I should own a castle, but I do not. And I am a 37-year-old husband and father. I like to describe myself as an aging but not jaded punk.
Yeah, that's an important distinction. You know, Aging makes you sound like you're wise enough to not fall for things. Jaded makes you sound like you don't fall for anything. You know,
we're close enough friends, Chris, where if you ever hear me say anything along the lines of kids these days, like you have all of the permission to just punch me in the nose.
Awesome. I will. I'll write that down somewhere and I'll show you almost like a badge.
Right before you assault me. Yeah.
Yeah. This was you. You commanded this. Before I even asked when you started making music, where did you grow up?
Right.
What was your early life like?
This is a terrible joke, but most of the time when people ask me, where are you from? I always say, my mother. Which, of course, answers nobody's questions, and then it confuses them, and then they're angry that I confuse them.
And then they're forced to like think about the complex process of birth.
I wish that most people that I did that to went that far. Most of the time, they just look at me like I farted. Like what?
Oh yeah.
But I was born in Hyannis, Massachusetts, or just outside thereof. Like one of 18 people that lived on Cape Cod in the 80s, I spent most of my life in Michigan, in the Lower Peninsula of Michigan, I lived there for about 22, 23 years before I moved to Nashville. I'm very grateful for the experiences I had growing up in Michigan because it's a little out of the way. There wasn't a lot in the way of broad market culture that was happening in the 80s and 90s in Michigan, and so being a little out of the way meant that that we had to like make our own fun and make our own little scenes, and also just growing up growing up so cold. And living in a landmass that has 5 months of unbroken cloud cover, it really develops a certain kind of personality, and by personality I mean mental illness. But yeah, that's like the broad brush version of where I lived.
I was thinking that personality had to include some ability to decide you are content, but you kind of went the other way on that.
The thing is that it did, because I didn't expect to ever move, and when I did, when I moved to Nashville, within a couple of months, I had this moment where I was like, why do I feel so much happier than I have my entire life? And I realized it's because there's sunshine.
That's awesome, man.
It's amazing what that does to your mood.
Yeah, it really is, and also, I mean, even just warm weather, like feeling warmth down, and not artificial warmth, not heater warmth, not even like good fireplace warmth, but real deal warmth all the way into your bones that have been Michigan cold for most of your life. I imagine was a wake up call.
Yeah, I mean, I used to wear it as a badge of honor that I survived something every year, but it's more just like, or is that like some form of PTSD where like I constantly had to survive something? I don't know.
Yeah, a little bit of a Stockholm syndrome.
Yeah, dude, there are a lot of people in my hometown that never leave. They do just back 2 years later because it's the only life that they've ever known. I'm sure that's the story for a lot of people's hometown experience.
Yeah. I imagine so. Like, I bet I could drive through my hometown and point at least one person broken down on the side of the road who I grew up, went to high school with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and now they own a power washing business or something. I don't.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, they do. Oh man, the successful ones, So in that timeline that you've kind of laid out for us, when did you start playing music? I can only imagine it was somewhere along the lines of making your own scenes and making your own fun. But tell me some about that.
Sure. Well, music was a part of my life from like day one. My dad was a musician. He was in one of the like early 1970s Christian rock bands, and he's like playing with Larry Norman and Phil Keaggy, and the kind of band that like would walk on stage in their sandals with their long hairs and their beard. Like the elder board of the church would stand up and walk out and protest. And now like 50 years later, you listen to this and it's like very, very tame music, but but it was transgressive at the time. And so, but like I thought he was a rock star from the moment my hippocampus started like forming memories, because he played guitar all the time, and like he had a record, and like there was a point in his life where like he quit college and like toured Europe, and I just thought that was the most amazing thing. And so being the third out of four children with two older brothers who for most of their young lives were just absolute monsters. Like I'd spent a lot of time staying out of the way, and playing music was something that would engage me, but I wouldn't necessarily have to like take a lot of attention to do it. So I would get gifts like keyboards and hand drums, and I would just like go down to the basement and just pluck around and like play with sounds, and was just like magical being able to like do an action and then have a sound come out of it. And then, the Casio 100 keyboard or something, hit like two buttons, and then that same action produces an entirely different sound. And now my 4-year-old brain is melting out of my nose. So that was all like well and good. And I spent some time playing viola, but I always wanted to play guitar. But my dad had really nice guitars, and there was no way he was going to let some child handle these like precious instruments. So when I was 11, I started homeschooling because for like 5 years I was getting the shit kicked out of me. And my 5th grade teacher wrote on my report card, "Pull him out. He's not going to survive the middle school." So I started homeschooling, and I got bored because I'd finish all my work in like half an hour. And now I'm just like looking at my parents like, entertain me. What do I do? Like, engage me. I need something. I need to do something. Yeah. And so my dad finally gave in, and he had this like old harmony guitar that he kept in the basement, and he let me play that. And the action on that guitar, like the distance of the strings to the fretboard, was set so high that like even to this day, like I squeeze the heck out of my instrument because I'm just so used to like clawing. That's like how I formed playing guitar. But I wrote my first full song on that guitar when I was about 11 years old. And, you know, in terms of like a verse, chorus. And I think it must have made some kind of impression on him because within a couple of months, he's letting me play his like 1970s Gibson and then Martin and stuff. Because
awesome.
I was like putting the time and effort into it, and it was clear that I wasn't, you know, going to pretend to smash it like Paul Simonon or something.
Yeah.
So 11 is where I went from playing music to creating music, and you know, like doing the cassette recorder thing where I'm like, "Hi, this is Isaiah, and this my sister," you know.
Yeah.
I feel like I've heard that story 100 times from people, but for every 100 people that probably have that story, there are millions who do not. You know, so I think it's important that everybody has that moment where it's like, this is a piece of magical, you know, this thing where I do this action and the sound comes out and it's something that I did, and then that satisfaction pushes you to keep doing it and make another one.
It's cool too. Like it pushes you to keep doing it, and every single time an element to what you can do, it becomes like this whole new level of joy. You know, you're like, oh, I learned a minor chord, and now I can write 100 more songs.
Yeah, like I remember messing around with the G chord and running up to my dad and going, "What's this?" And he goes, "That's a G7." Oh, people know about this. All right.
Yeah. I invented guitar.
Right.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. So when did around 11 you started playing guitar, you moved into creating music? When did you first start to collaborate with others or form your first band?
There was a kid in my neighborhood learning how to play drums. And I didn't think about it until literally just this moment, but this is going to be a through line of my life story. Some enthusiastic drummer wants to play drums, but needs something to play drums to, and goes, "Hey man, come over to my house and let's just show me what you got. Anything? What are you working on? What are you learning? Let me play along to whatever you're doing." Like we were 12 and learning how to play like Weezer and Ramones and stuff like that. And I think like I remember when I like, you know, we thought we were like really hot stuff learning how to play Possum Kingdom by Toadies. And then I was but I didn't show him my original for probably about a year because like I thought that my voice was kind of, you know, I liked a lot of like aggressive, full-throated, intense music, and my voice was just a little too tender to pull that stuff off, and so I was embarrassed.
At 11, at 12 now, I guess. Yeah.
I've been very hard on myself most of my life, and so it wasn't until like our band, which okay, I'm gonna have to like wind the dial back, you know, 25 years, but I think we were called like Electro Major Roughage or something like that, which who knows what that means. There were 3 of us in the band, so we probably all got to, I don't know. But when I played my like an original song and like sang it in a non-affected natural voice, I remember them staring at me. But you're 12, so this is like the era where like you call each other horrible slurs and you punch each other in the arm because you don't know any better. Like you don't understand what kindness is. And so like there was a moment where like these 2 guys just stared at me, and I thought that I had done something wrong.
And then that's the only option at age.
And then one of them called me a terrible slur and punched me in the arm, and I stopped showing them songs. So I didn't, I mean, but I kept writing them, you know, so we were just a dumb, like cover party band, you know, playing like middle school parties and stuff. So it like, I didn't really start to push playing the songs I was creating until the year after, when I moved to Grand Rapids, and again met an enthusiastic drummer named Benny, who was like, well, I play drums and I want to play in a band, and you play guitar, so let's do this. Come over to my basement. I just want to play my drums along with something. And our band was called White Vinyl. And yeah, there I am, 13 years old, writing songs about the political depth that a 13-year-old can, delve. Making references to Greg Ginn, but mispronouncing his name and stuff. Yeah, so I mean, it didn't take, in the grand scheme of things, it didn't take too long for me to start writing songs to, hi everybody, I'm Isaiah, and this is in front of a crowd. It was, a span of 2 years.
I often hear people get onto quicker turnaround time when they start to play with other people. Do you think that happened for you?
Oh yeah, I mean, that's positive feedback, right? Like if you have somebody who's like, "Whoa, man, I really like this," it presses that button in your brain, and you're like, "Oh, this is good for someone else." And now you want to see if there are other people that it's good for, and yeah, you get motivated to find those people that that have that same reaction as your friend or your general listener or whatever.
I feel like that is a kind of a feeling that people can convince themselves is a lesser thing of themselves. Like I want people to like this music, but it is absolutely natural and good to want to create things that people enjoy.
I mean, imagine if it were something else, right? Like imagine if you're the kind of person who enjoys book clubs and if you share your insight on a book with a group of people and no one has any connection with what you're saying to what they were reading, you will probably try to just say less over time. And if you don't, then you are just making noise. And it's not helping anybody. But if you make some point like, I really thought that when this character encountered this particular situation that they grew as a person in this way, and someone else goes, I noticed that as well. Again, that pushes that button in your brain. You're like, oh, good. I'm not the only person who thinks like this.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah. There's a you can't find out you are not the only person who thinks a way unless you are willing to share those thoughts. In some
sounds terrible.
Yeah. If you could give your past self a piece of advice from who you are today, what would that be?
Finding the joy that you had when you have that first moment where you make that point of connection, and being able to access that feeling of joy without adding a whole lot to it. Because you get told over time that, you can't say that verse or that chorus that way because it's going to offend some people in this way or that way. Or, if you use that word, then it's not going to ever get played on the radio. Which, again, I'm showing my age, like the radio used to matter. Essentially, you over time, you receive messages from people that no one will take you seriously if you do things the way that you are doing them right now. And you begin to believe that stuff to a point where you self-edit, and it becomes less and less about a personal expression and more about creating an idea that you might have and might be original in such a way that the broadest amount of people will accept it. And so, like, if I had to give advice to my past self, I think I would say, like, charge money for your work, because you want to at least let people understand that you yourself value it. But like, the way that people measure their success is pretty poisonous. How many people pay money for what you do, or how much money you make. it's just like fame and fortune as barometers for creative success will crush your spirit, because you will have had to cut away so many pieces of it in order to achieve more and more of that thing. If that is your goal, that goal is an empty promise. And the more that you reach, it sounds like some terrible Greek tragedy, right? Like you're standing in a pool of water and you reach for it and the water just slightly shifts away. And even if it doesn't happen right away, like maybe you do achieve success and you get a record deal and some distribution and you get on some touring circuit and like you're making it, in time, that way of creating is going to burn you out, because you're not actually getting the thing inside of you fully out. And the person that you know that you are inside will not have that button pressed in your brain, because you won't have somebody see who you really are and go, I also think that thing. I also feel that way. And that is just deadening. And I had a therapist who said, if you start to deaden one of your emotions, in time, all of your emotions will start to go dead. So if you tell yourself, I can't be sad, people don't want to hear me be sad. And so you just tamp down all of your sad feelings to just be like a happy person. In time, you will not be a happy person. You can't keep that up forever. You have to be a fully formed person. And so when you're creating, you have to let all of that out. That joy of expression, it can exist without money and without accolade. I mean, like, thousands of people during this time of quarantine learned how to make sourdough. Like, you couldn't look at social media without seeing tons of people like, I made this bread. But like, no one is kicking themselves because they haven't become a professional baker.
Yeah.
They're just like, look, I did this.
Mm-hmm.
And that needs to, that little coal needs to be fanned inside of us.
Hell yeah, man. I can't agree more. I do not want to get further from the point, because it perfectly lines up with the song that I'd like you to introduce for us. Can you introduce I Don't Want to Be Famous?
Yeah. So I did the music thing, and I had a record deal, and then I lost the record deal because my songwriting partner got offered to join a band that became immensely more famous, and then I joined another band that started to get famous. At one point in time, this magazine that doesn't exist anymore, it's Jane Magazine, once listed us as one of the top 10 best unsigned artists in the country. And people were just waiting for it to happen. And then just like so many stories, like it's that thing you do, like all the interpersonal stuff, just everything exploded. And this isn't a result of it, but that's around the time that I moved to. And when I started this band called The Summer Country, I told them, I want to do a perfect expression of who I am, but in a way that is humble. And it's not about trying to make it. I just want to reconnect with that feeling of joy and creativity. And that band lasted for 8 years. And the only fight we ever had is when the drummer was like, we should go on tour. And the rest of us said, no. But yeah, this was one of my favorite songs that we made together. And it's called I Don't Want to Be Famous.
I want you to listen. I'd give it all up if I thought it would make a difference. But that's not the case, is it? And I don't want to show my face, I don't want you to want me. I couldn't care less about the politics of fame and glory. Of fame and glory. But if the kids are getting dumber these days, and I wish I had something to give them, assuming they'd listen. I mean, assuming they could hear it. Man, I should have gone to college and been a teacher. I tell a generation of kids the real meaning of life and everything. But if the kids are getting dumber these days, then I wish I had something to give them, assuming they'd listen. Who am I kidding? I want you to listen. I'd give it all up if I thought it would make a difference. And I don't want to show my face, I don't want you to want me. I couldn't care less about the politics of fame and glory. Of fame and glory. Of fame and glory.
It almost seems criminal to cut off some good feedback ending.
That's the one record I've got up on Spotify, and I wish it weren't. I hate Spotify so much.
Oh my, I know, right? The what is it, like 0.003 pennies per play if you're lucky?
I don't even care about that. It just feels like there's this gate that you have to go through so many steps in order for them to open the gate and go, yes, come on in.
Yes, yeah.
I wish that Bandcamp were a more robust, like it had a more robust streaming app, because
yeah, absolutely,
it's so easy to set up and it's way more like egalitarian, and they give way more money to the artists. But I just wish the search function and the ability to like curate the music that you listen to were easier.
Yeah, I agree. How is it when you sit down with an idea that it becomes a song?
Yeah. Most of the time, I mean, there are occasions in where like lightning strikes and I sit down and then 15 minutes later, I'm like, here's this fully formed thing. But those moments are rare and few. But in terms of like basic process, like most of the time I just kind of like mess around on my instrument until something catches my interest, and then like I hum nonsense and then a melody emerges, and then like in terms of lyrics, I mean, because most of the time like the structure of my music is not that complicated. I mean, I cut my teeth on Ramones and like, you know, basic pop music, and so once I can like put together some kind of just basic like A B C B, you know, kind of structure, then I'll sit down and like try to think of the lyrics, and when I write the lyrics, this is where like I put the most time into the process of it. And I think I was in my 20s. I'd probably read some Ernest Hemingway or something, and just sat down and was like, okay, I got to think of the most true thing that's in my heart right now. Like, what if I had a statement that I said about what I was thinking and feeling right now, what would be the most true and honest thing about what I'm thinking and feeling right now? And so like that last song, I Don't Want to Be Famous, that was in that very moment, like a surprising instance of self-discovery. It's where I finally was able to express that of myself. I go, yeah, I'm frustrated because I don't want to worry about like what I look like in a picture. I don't want to worry about the clothes that I wear on stage. I don't want to worry about being so likable that people will then listen. I just want to make something so that people hear it. I don't want to deal with the politics of the fame and the glory. I just want someone to hear this thing because I feel like it could help someone else. And the lyrics then just kind of came from there. The real struggle then is to keep it from being like, what's the word, didactic. I don't want to just like sit down with like a lesson plan and go point A, sub point.
Yeah. An essay is this many paragraphs and this many lines.
Yeah. Well, and like the truth of the matter is that like I've been doing this now for 25 years, and the truth is that I don't know everything, and I've been wrong about so much in my life. And so the moment that I start to say, okay, here's something true that I recognize in myself. This is something very feel or what I'm thinking. And the moment that I start to like then put it up on some kind of screen projected behind me and go, this is my TED Talk now or whatever. Like I know that in a couple of years I'll look back at that and start to cringe at its immaturity. And the thing is that like even in that moment of immaturity that I listened back to like a record that I made when I was 19, even though I listened to some of those songs, I'm like, oh, I was not a good person to women, or something like, because I was a teenager, I just didn't my brain hadn't fully formed, and I didn't understand kindness, and I was very selfish, and now looking back, I'm like, right, okay, I'm so glad that I'm not there anymore. Glad that I'm right now, and it's fine because everything is a step towards wisdom, including our foolishness. So there was a period of time where I was in seminary, and one of the things that one of the conclusions that I came to was that in Genesis, the book of Genesis, the first sin, the first crime that man commits is not disobeying God and eating a piece of fruit. The first sin that man commits is believing that they can know the difference between good and evil on a level that God knows good and evil. And if you believe that you know the difference between what is good, what is right, and what is evil and what is wrong, then you are a fool. And so that attitude that I don't like this book a whole lot. I mean, the conclusions that it makes, but like the Chuck Klosterman book, like, but what if we're wrong, where he confronts that idea of certitude, where, oh, well, we've arrived and we know everything that there is to know. And this is the apex of human achievement and whatever. You're wrong. In 1,000 years, you're the generations that follow you will look back and go, I can't believe that they thought the earth went around the sun. And so I try not to get too teachy in the music because I'm now setting myself up for that feeling 5, 10, 15 years later, more just, let's just express it. Let's just give a very honest expression of where I am right now, in a way that is true, but understanding that it's not universally true for everybody.
Yeah. I think that is a really significant moment in like self-awareness when you realize you were not perfect and now will be no different today.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that one thing that has been hard but very valuable for me in that discovery has been learning to be kind to those memories of dumb me.
Yeah.
Someday I'm going to need to be kind to my memories of me right now. And before then, I'm going to need to be kind to somebody who believes or thinks something I used to and now look down on,
Yeah, and I'm grateful to be able to see those past moments, because then when I interact with some 19-year-old kid right now, and I recognize those same thoughts and feelings in them, I have like a touch point where I can go, hey, you know what? I feel like I experienced something similar to what you're experiencing right now, and a little further down the road, it could look a little different to you. It could look more like this, and maybe if I give that lesson now, maybe I save them some of the heartache and struggle of figuring that out for themselves on their own. So just like you said, you've got to be kind to that past person, because that past person led you to where you are right now.
Yeah, man, it's tricky.
It is, especially when like some of it's really cringy, and you're just like,
Yeah.
oh, I would not be, I'm a bad person. So even when you have those moments where you like physically shiver and remember some past shame, the trick is to pause and take a moment and be grateful for having that experience, because it taught you how to do things differently. So if you look at the positive of it and say, oh yeah, I need to be more kind when I feel threatened by somebody instead of lashing out in anger. Where you can now construct something out of that experience that makes you a better person.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And I feel like the song we just listened to, you talked about like if kids are getting dumber, you should have something to tell them. I feel like you could write a few concept albums about that exact thought, and maybe someone will hear it and it will land the way it needs to.
Yeah, I mean, I wrote that song like 8 or 9 years ago, and even now listening to it, there are aspects of it to myself I'm still struggling with that honest feeling that's within me. Things like the line, assuming they listen. I mean, assuming they could hear it. Who am I kidding?
Yeah.
All of that is sprinkled in there too.
But I wanted to ask, like, in all the time you've had, I can only imagine having been in a band with like an established record deal and touring, and also this band that basically decided against trying for those things and stuck together so long. What have been some helpful promotional things that you have found? Like, when were the most people hearing your music?
Well, for a good bit of my time in Michigan, I lived in Grand Rapids, and I feel like it almost felt like it was cheating, because there weren't a lot of people population-wise that lived there, and like I said, that there wasn't a lot of tours that came through that town. And so we had to like make our own fun and start our own like venues and like connect with other bands so that we could have 3 groups play on one show. And because you had to have so much camaraderie, it felt easy to get 50 people to show up to anything.
Yeah.
And if you were good, promotion almost didn't matter, because people were going to tell other people like, yo, these guys are good. And like next Friday, they're going to be playing at this like youth group room or whatever. Like, let's go and check those out. And then when I was in that like kind of fiercely independent band, the like top 10 best unsigned band, that was like during sort of the nascent era of MySpace. And I would spend 8 hours on MySpace going to a band's page, some band that I thought sounded like what we sounded like, some similar feeling band, like let's just say Canadian rock band Sloan. I'd go to Sloan's page and look at all of the people that followed Sloan, and then I would like go line by line, and I would look at each person's individual profile and like read a little bit about them. And then I had this sort of form, message. I mean, like the skeleton of it was always similar, but I would just be like, hey, what's up? My name is Isaiah. I'm in this band. And I saw that you like Sloan. I thought that maybe you might like our music too. So here's a link. But also, I wanted to say, like, your Rivers Cuomo teddy bear is hilarious. That's awesome. I'm so glad that I saw that thing. So like, I tried to like make some kind of personal connection with them, so it didn't feel like soulless robot typing. And I actually made a lot of like connections with people that way that felt like friendship. And then I was connecting with people outside of Grand Rapids the same way that I connected people at like the goth coffee shop in Grand Rapids, just on a wider scale, because I'm making it somewhat about them too. And, you know, when people feel like you're making that personal connection, then they're more likely to check you out because it's not just advertising. And, I mean, that's how Jane Magazine found us, because I ended up talking to one of their editors. And we booked whole tours that way because people were like, yo, you want to come to New York? You want to play Gainesville? Like, when are you guys coming through our town? And I would say something like, I don't know, because we don't have money behind us. So do it ourselves. And they're like, oh, we'll handle it. We'll set you up. We'll set up a show. We'll find some local band. You guys come down. I think that is still a possible. I think that that's still a possibility in today's social media environment, because so much social media is just like shameless self-promotion, but it doesn't necessarily take into account the individual that's listening to you. You're just trying to get a sea of heads and not necessarily individuals to connect with your message the way that it felt that first time that person was like, hey, I feel that way too. Like, you're trying to find someone else who has a rich internal history and thought life the way that you do. So if I were to ever try to promote in a way like I did with my previous band, I think that's how I would do it. I mean, that's something that has been a pretty recent rediscovery. It was like, yeah, that's why that worked. That's why that worked. And I'm writing a new record right now, which spoilers, Chris has agreed to be on. But that's a message that I put in there. It's like, hey, I started to believe this lie, and yet, like, it was just in pursuit of pop success, and that is a very flimsy thing on which to stand. So, so the idea of promotion, like, I don't know if I'll ever talk to another PR firm ever again. I annoyed so many of them because I just didn't want to pretend to be cool at a party.
I heard one time that a really good listener will try to say back to the speaker what they think they just said.
Oh yeah, I've heard that too. Mm-hmm.
And I believe what you just said is you use technology that was available to you to pretty much the fullest extent, but you never gave up on the heart of what it was you were actually trying to do and say, which was connect with other human beings.
Yeah. It can be exhausting because so many people are trying to self-promote. And so there are people that, like, I've connected with where I realize, oh, this is just another self-promotion machine. And it gets me, like, really sad. And I sort of, like, quietly walk away from it.
Yeah.
But that cannot always be the case. There are going to be people that you meet and interact with, and it is wholesome and positive. And you can make friends. Like social media isn't just like full of dirt bags and commercials. I
think that is a really, it's one of the more helpful rock band oriented pieces of advice that I've heard, is like do it the way you want to do it, and network with real people doing it the same way or doing it at least the way they want to do it, even if it's not the same specific detailed way. But that's cool, man. I feel like
like-minded doesn't necessarily mean that they agree with you.
Yeah, exactly. It just means they hold the same internal values important, even if the same thoughts don't come from them.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, the purpose is connection. The purpose isn't being right or wrong together. I remember, like, reading the liner notes of an album by Atmosphere, where it's like something to the effect of, this song goes out to all those people who just identify with things that they hate. I was like, oh yeah, there's a lot of people that
Yeah.
No, I feel like now more than ever, that idea of connection is vitally important, because I want to say the name of the author is, God, I'm gonna be so embarrassed if I get this wrong, but I'm not going to cheat. I'm not going to look it up. I think her name is Sally Cohn, but it's called The Opposite of Hate. That's definitely the book title, so you can search it.
Okay.
But the point that she made was that that like famed writer and Holocaust survivor Elie Wiesel is credited with having said, the opposite of love is not hate. The opposite of love is indifference, because there were so many people that turned a blind eye to the atrocities that were happening to him and the people in his community. And this author Cohn, the point that she makes is, there's a potential inverse to that statement, in that the opposite of hate is not necessarily love, that the opposite of hate is connection. And that you can still disagree with a person, but if you take the time and effort to try to connect and with them, to understand why they think or feel the way that they think or feel, so that you can see things from their point of view, you can still disagree with them. You can still go, I think that that's wrong, or even like hurtful. But looking through an opinion or a political stance or a religious belief or anything that divides people, and looking through that at the person to see who they are and how they came to that way of thinking, allows you to have more empathy. And you can, like, to bring it back to like my seminary days, like I think that's one way, like that might be the only way in which it's possible to truly love your enemy. And so connection now, like I say, is more vital than ever. And when you make that kind of a connection with a person, whether you agree with them or not, I feel like that is such a special, precious thing, and it should be sought.
I think so too, and I think it's a thing worth diving into more. But I almost feel like it plays into a lot of what you've said already about having people say the "me too" to your art and to what you make. And would you say that is the main reason you're making art?
Without a doubt. Let's see. So in 2016, I thought I was dying, and I went to a doctor, and that doctor said, "Hey, you're having a panic attack." And I said, "No way, that's impossible." And then the doctor was like, "Well, are you experiencing the following physical symptoms?" And I said, "No." And he said, this is a panic attack. You're having a panic attack. It's very normal. Lots of people have them. Here's the number for a therapist. And I got diagnosed with an anxiety disorder and some PTSD. And I, looking back after like a couple of years of therapy, looking back, I realized, oh, this has been an undiagnosed situation in my mind since I was very young. And music was a way for me to try to take a complex emotion that I couldn't necessarily explain, say, to my mother when she asks me what's wrong. I could just sing this song that's an expression of that morsel of a thought or feeling. And having that moment of understanding gave me a sense of ease. Like a tightness in your chest starts to just relax, because, oh, okay, I'm not alone in feeling this way, or somebody gets it, even if they're not feeling the same thing, like they understand it now. And because this particular brand of mental illness will lie to you that, like, no one understands, you're a burden, don't talk about it. Like, you're bumming people out, man. And so when I got diagnosed, it was around the time that my friend that I met when I was 13, my friend Benny, he had announced that he had a terminal form of brain cancer, and 5 months later he was gone. And and I was in the room when he went, and it's the most horrifying thing I've ever, and so I started writing tons of music again, and relative tons. I'm not Robert Pollard or whatever, but I started writing more songs because I had to take these complex, horrifying thoughts and feelings and put shape to them, and find some hope within them, and put it out there. And then I shelved it because I was still processing through like healing it, from this disease. Like I insist with people that I don't tell them that I insist with every person I've ever talked to that I am going to get better. That this is not who I am forever, and I felt like music was a good way to ease all of that tension in my mind. That there will be a relaxing, there will be peace again in my brain, no matter how far back I have to go and how many things I have to expunge out of it. But that process is vital, because having that connection of finding somebody else who, even if they don't experience it for themselves, can see it and understand it, is immensely healing for me. And so this whole new record is full of profoundly sad material set to like relatively fast kind of pop punk music, and already the people that I've been willing to sort of like open the curtain a little bit to let them see what I'm working on have expressed those things that I am seeking out, where they go, oh wow, I never realized, or I see what you're saying now, or I never made that connection before. And already, even though we haven't but done demos, I already feel that easing in my mind, and I crave it. I want to do more of it.
Yeah, I'm enthused to hear that. I feel like we should probably just stop recording now, and I'll go finish recording these drum demos. I wanted to revisit something you were saying, and I often hear people say, like, if you're stressed out or if you're having some anxiety, it helps to make a list of what you need to do, because then you have externalized those panicking, swirling thoughts. You've put them somewhere that they can't swim around anymore. And I feel like there is a certain ability to do that with thoughts and feelings that comes through making art. Like you've taken that memory that was plaguing you, and you've put it in a song that you can revisit anytime. You can get that song back down, and you can examine those thoughts and feelings, so you don't have to all the time,
Yeah. And, harking back to a point that we made earlier, it's now a touch point. So if you listen to that song again, to go, oh, you know what? I have a new perspective on that thought or feeling, and it's not nearly as grim as it was. I can see how I've gotten better, and it's still positive to your growth and your healing.
I feel like this is almost like a silly question to ask at this point. And I want to ask, how can listeners, just people who are hearing this show at some point, or even, people who have found the show because they already like your album, how can those people best support you as an artist or this album's success?
I find myself in a position that I haven't been in for like 10 years, in that I'm starting a new project, and yet I have no commodities for people to consume. There are no shirts, there are no stickers, there's no album yet. But I would hope that, however many dozens of people come across this, that they would hear this, and, at the risk of sounding desperate, like, I think I just want to have some help and encouragement in, like, because like I said, I'm a 37-year-old like dad, and yet some of the people that have heard these songs have taken it to heart, and I see that it's done some good for them, and I want that good for more people. So I just want to meet other bands, man, and I want to play some shows. I want to give some avenue of access for people to find that thing so they can have that, yeah, I know what you mean moment too. And even though it's going to push that button in my brain where like I get that dopamine hit, like I'm not overly concerned with like making it bigger than it naturally grows. But I think it cannot exist in a vacuum, and I need to make more connections. So I am the only Isaiah Kallman on the internet. I know that I think there'd be like one other Jewish guy out there named Isaiah Kallman on the internet, but there's not, at least not with my spelling. So I am easy to find, and I am generally pretty approachable. So if you find me out there, please reach out. Whether or not you're in a band or can book me a show, like I almost don't care. I want to make more connections to have a culture in which something can ferment well out of it.
Yeah, man. I think that's the reason we're all on the internet in the first place. You know, we're trying to build communities out of strangers.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, awesome, man. I want to get to the next, last track you're going to share with us. But before we do, I like to give guests an opportunity to assign homework, specifically to me, because I try to follow up on everything I'm told about. But basically, an album or a book or a movie or even a video game or something like that has just changed the way you've seen the world. You could think of it as something everyone should experience before they die. That's another way I like to put the question.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm a salesperson, and I spend a lot of time in my car walking, and so I'm often listening to music and audiobooks. So I'll just pick the most recent thing that I interacted with where I had that moment. There's an author named Tommy Orange, as in the color. He's like a Native American that lives in California, and he wrote a book called There There, THERE, and it takes place primarily in Oakland, California, and it weaves together a lot of different Native American voices. And I mean, for one, that's a people group that gets overlooked criminally and consistently, and so you don't hear that voice a lot. And so it was really refreshing to like be able to interact with that and just hear their perspective without it being interpreted through the voice of somebody who doesn't live that life. And as a person living in Nashville, where 7 or 8 years we've been experiencing a very painful boom of population growth and overdevelopment, where all of the people who live in Nashville and complain about new Nashville, I hope that you celebrate Indigenous Peoples Day differently this year, because that's basically what white people have done from the start. We come in and go, hey, this is nice, I'll take it. Anybody living in Nashville and feeling that pain is going to connect with that story and really get some healthy perspective of like, if you're white and you live in this country, then you have to recognize that you are a part of gentrification, and there is a price to pay, and usually it's somebody else paying it. So that was a really, I mean, I'm not going to say I'm fully informed on those issues, but it was like, oh, good. I'm hearing this perspective, and I can apply it to myself and yet gain perspective and compassion in ways that I haven't before. And I always like that in books.
Yeah. I love that moment when I realize, oh, wait a second. My normal isn't everybody's normal. I'm reading someone else,
Yeah. I mean, the purpose of really good literature is to live vicariously through someone else's experiences. so that you can, one, not have to go through that yourself to learn those lessons. But two, it gives you a broader perspective so that you just become a less selfish person, a less self-focused, self-involved person.
Please introduce Shameless Balladeering. And is that how I say balladeering?
Shameless Balladeering. I don't even know if that's a word, but it's maybe the one song on here just like, some level of like power and speed. Like it feels quite a bit like, Woody Guthrie or folk punk or, something like that. But I feel like it kind of wraps up, the stuff that we've been talking about of just like, I used to believe that no one cared what I had to say, and that lie affected me. And now I think differently. And here it is.
I lived under an erroneous belief that no one gave a shit about the things I had to say, and I let that lie burn far too deep until I edited my words until there was no risk to take, with no verse, no chorus, no bridge could ever hold us. If it's pop, if it's pop, if it's pop. No passion, no cost, no hope to suffer loss. If it's pop, if it's pop, if it's pop. Well, I've got a heart, but I wear it in my chest. The ribs, the cage, the tongue, the key, the safe obscurity. And it burned inside till I could not accept. Too late to find by time and age, and let anything silence me. No verse, no chorus, no bridge could ever hold us. If it's pop, if it's pop, if it's pop. No passion, no cost, no unavoidable loss. If it's pop, if it's pop, if it's pop. And a single person shouting out in the noise may feel small until somebody comes and lends a second voice. And the message gets it cannot be ignored. Oh, we were dozens and then hundreds and then millions and more. And no verse, no chorus, no bridge could ever hold us. If it's pop, if it's pop, if it's pop. No passion, no cost, no unavoidable loss. If it's pop, if it's pop, if it's pop. If it's pop, if it's pop, if it's pop.
That was Shameless Balladeering featuring. Do you use your real name on the show?
I do. Yeah, I use a lot.
Oh, this is the featuring Chris Reeve.
Yeah, that's me. That's me. I had a lifetime. I'll say a lifetime of people asking me if I'm Superman, and then I'd say a few solid years there in the middle when just saying the rudest thing possible was what comedy was. Usually they'd point out that I am walking. And then they would point out that I am alive and walking. And I'm just like, yep, Yeah, that guy's dead. You're right.
They say that tragedy plus time equals comedy, but a lot of people don't understand the time bit
at all. Yeah, it's painful, but man, yeah, I really dig that song. I feel like you have been extremely open and honest and upfront with the difficulty that you have faced, with your I'd say your mental health. I don't want to say your mental illness, because I don't know if that is the most uplifting way to say it, but
6.5 dozen,
Yeah, gotcha. Yeah. Well, I the whole time I've known you have done nothing but impress me with your willingness to talk about difficult things. And I think that's something that your music does really well, is it talks about difficult things in a way that you have expressed is a toe tapper. And I think the world just needs more of that, man. And I'm glad you're making it, and I'm glad you've talked to me.
Oh yeah, man. Well, I appreciate you giving me the opportunity to make it a little bit more public than us just drinking on your porch.
Yeah, exactly. We could have this talk once a week. I'd be fine with not recording.
Totally.
I want to thank Isaiah for sharing his time and his talent and his insights with us today. And I want to thank you, of course, for listening, for giving the show a chance. I really hope you have picked up some inspiration or some encouragement, or maybe even some practical, applicable tips that you could use next time you sit down with your art, with your instrument. I never leave a conversation like this with a friend or with a fellow artist without feeling pumped to create something. I hope you're having more conversations with friends, with other people in your own community, and I hope if you don't have a community, you're going to find one. I believe everything is better when we get more people involved with it. Very soon, we'll share a little bit more time with some more talented artists, but until then, of course, please stay courageous, stay curious, and stay creative.